And welcome to another episode of A Real Point of View. My name is Greg Morgan. I'm the Real Movie Guy. And joining me tonight are our cast of criminals. No, just kidding. Our cast of critics. And they are Mr. Steve C. And he is the critic who doesn't pick a bad movie. And then
Allegedly.
there's, oh, you said it for yourself today, huh, Steve? And
Uh-huh.
also
No,
joining
no,
us,
Karen said it.
is
Never give me a chance to say it anymore. Usually it's a pregnant pause, and I can get that in there. But you keep like rushing over it, like you're trying to keep me from saying it.
well, that's Karen D. She's the movie maven, and she and Steve always have this clash here. Uh,
Clash the Titans.
Let me say it again, Steve. Uh, he's the critic who never picks a bad film.
Allegedly.
I don't know. It sounded good the second time too, Steve. I'm sorry, brother.
All the flavors in the world, and you chose to be salty.
Oh, that's a good one. I have to remember that one.
Ladies and gentlemen, whether it be salty or sweet, here we are to talk about films this week. So this week, kind of a crazy, weird essence in my head about what the theme would be. And although we sometimes take turns in the theme, it was on me this week, and my cohorts are looking at me like, "What? Where'd that come from?" I don't know. I think I was hearing a movie, TV, either a TV commercial or some music that I was hearing on the radio in the car. I don't know, but River was in it. And so tonight we're going to talk about movies that have River in the title. And you'd be surprised how many movies have River in the title. Like, approximately how many have you come across so far, Steve?
I came across 100.
See, that's a lot. And that's probably not all of them.
That is a lot. That's a lot of foreign movies, too.
Yeah, and so with that being said, obviously, River is, by a lot of these producers and movie directors and writers and all that good stuff, River is a popular word. But now the question is, are they good films just because they have River in it? Now, I know one of the more popular films in yesteryear, not even yesteryear really, just a few decades ago now, was A River Runs Through It with Brad Pitt. But we're not talking about that movie today because people talk about that movie all the time. And not that it was a bad movie, it's actually a pretty decent film, but let's talk about some other films that have River in the title. So I have a couple of films, and my cohorts have some films as well to share with us tonight about River, the word River. Now, I've
Not
got
about
two
the word
films.
river.
Say again?
I said not about the word river.
Well, not about the word River. Good point, Steve. With River in the title. With River in the title. And the two movies I have, one of them, which is Wind River, and the other one is Red River. And only one of these movies is taking place anywhere near a river. so you got to wonder, where they come up with the name for some of these movies. So without further ado, if you guys don't mind, I'll go ahead and get started.
That sounds like a fine idea. Since
All
it's
right.
your crazy idea.
Go for it.
Okay. In this way, and get out of it really fast. So I was looking for movies to watch, and I came across a movie called Wind River. And this movie basically talks about different communities. And these communities are at odds the whole time through the film. There's the federal community, the local community, and the territorial community. This movie takes place in Wyoming, and this takes place in the dead of winter. And as I look through the film, and I watched the film closely, and I'll be very honest with you, I saw no rivers anywhere. A lot of snow, no rivers. A lot of wind, So the wind part was right, but no rivers. But that didn't take anything away from the movie being a pretty decent film. This film talks about murder and mayhem in the Native American nation in Wyoming. And Jeremy Renner's character is involved in this community through actually more than one way. It's a pretty interesting film, and it starts a little slow, but it builds pretty quickly, and it has a very interesting climax to the film. So I would recommend this film. It's a pretty good movie. Basically, Jeremy Renner's character, he's involved in the situation because of through marriage. He marries a Native American woman, has 2 children, and then tragedy strikes, and it basically splits the family apart. But in the essence of the film, he is a hunter of predators. He works for the forestry department, and so he helps livestock by getting rid of coyotes and wolves and mountain lions, things of that nature that are terrorizing the farmers and the landowners in this territory in the upper part of Wyoming, which, as you look at the movie, is the really, really cold part. So while he is trying to do a favor for his former father-in-law, he comes across something a little strange as he's taking taking himself out here to kind of look around and see what's going on, because again, one of the first things he finds is his father-in-law, part of his father-in-law's livestock that's been killed, and he's trying to figure out what predator actually killed it. He's thinking it is a mountain lion, so also it is his father-in-law thinking it's a mountain lion. So he's getting himself prepared to go and kind of find this family of lions, because he notices there's more than one. So as he's going out there trying to do this, he sees something else that's not quite right in his line of vision. So he's got his binoculars and he sees something in the wilderness, and that's what really makes the movie and begins to truly help the movie unfold into what's going to be a interesting murder case in this winter landscape. There's some really good actors in the film. One of my favorite actors is in this particular film is not just Jeremy Renner, which I do like him, but it's Graham Greene. And a lot of you may remember Graham Greene from the Kevin Costner movie.
Dances with Wolves.
Thank you, Dances with Wolves. And he's the one the medicine man he's trying to talk to in that film. Well, in this case, Graham Greene is actually the territorial police officer, and he's out there trying to help the situation, and he and Jeremy have a good rapport over time. And because again, Jeremy's been in this community because of his family, and he figures that this guy's going to be helpful in this investigation. And because it's a murder situation, the FBI is actually comes in to be a part of this investigation. So we have all these different factions, and then there's the corporate faction that's on the property trying to do something on the property in the territory, and their own security personnel. And here's where the conflict ensues. So to not give too much more away about the film, it's a really good film. It's a film that talks about the community. It's a film that talks about the differences, the disparity between the different factions. It talks about trust and lack of trust. I mean, it goes about many, many different gambits in this film, and that's one reason why I like it. Now, as far as the script is concerned, it's a pretty decent script. It's not overbearing, but the movie does flow. And then when it flows to the climax, it's not something that you necessarily think is going to happen. And then it just goes crazy for a little while. So I like this movie. I think it's worth watching. If I gave it a percentage, I'd probably give it about, it's about a 75 to 80% film. 8 out of 10, 7.5, maybe 7.75 out of a 10. But I did like it. So
It flows at least, so that's really the only river thing
maybe
about
that's it. Maybe that's just it. That's the river essence right there, Steve. You're right. It flows. And so the river rears its strange and mystical head into the essence of the film by the film flowing. Um,
Lord.
and if we probably stuck around for the winter to be over, we might even see a river. But anyway, but no visible river.
What about wind? Will we see some wind?
You're going to see a lot of wind. There's a lot of wind.
It's wind for days.
And
It's
some hot
wind.
air, too. There's a
It's
lot of hot
wind.
air blowing around here right now.
Okay, anyway.
I'll take it is.
But hey, it's a pretty decent film. And again, but no river. So my next film that I want to talk about briefly is Red River. Now, ironically, in this film, there's a lot of water. And it's basically takes place in Missouri. So it's near the Red River. It's in the Red River Valley. And they do hit the river because there's a lot of cattle in this movie. And the cattle got to drink from somewhere. And guess what? They drink from a river. So the river actually does make sense in this film. Now, this is a film about longevity, a film about power, and a film about who's the fastest gun. So this is definitely a Western, ladies and gentlemen. Red River stars John Wayne, Montgomery Cleft.
Love Montgomery Cleft.
Yeah, definitely love Montgomery Cleft. Another really good actor that's in this movie is John Ireland. Love John Ireland. And Harry Carey Harry Carey Sr. is in this film, who was in a lot of John Wayne films like Rio Grande, Rio Bravo, a lot of Rio movies.
And Rio is Spanish for, guess what? River.
River. Okay, so we got that in. We were trying to do our three-part harmony for a long time now.
Harmonizing.
We got it in there. All right, but yeah, this is a really good movie. This movie, I give this movie an 8.5. Stars are 85%. This movie basically is an essence of John Wayne is on the frontier and he finds this wandering boy whose wagon train either left him or left him for dead, and he has one possession with him, which is a cattle, one steer. And so from that one steer, they built a large ranch with many steers. It took them 14 years to get this humongous herd, and now they're going to take this humongous herd down to market and get all this money so that they don't have to do anything else for the rest of their lives. So basically, it's a cattle run, and this cattle drive, just like anything else, you try to get all different hands on there to help to drive the cattle. Well, sometimes those hands are not good people. And so this movie kind of shows you a little bit about that, but it's really the struggle between Montgomery Cleft, who is the quote unquote adoptive son of John Wayne, and John Wayne's character in this film. John Wayne is very set in his ways and wants things to be done his way. His stepson, however, is a little bit more level-headed, yet at the same time still stubborn, just like the old man, quote unquote. So what do? They've got to figure out a way to drive this cattle with all the personalities, and not just the owners, but all the personalities of the people who are helping them drive this. And some of them are gunfighters. And so we have this gunfighting essence between John Ireland and Montgomery Cleft throughout the whole film as to who's the fastest. Compliments, sneers, edging, trying to get each other to draw first. But yet the most important thing is getting the cattle to market. And everybody seems to forget that along the way. So this is a movie of a lot of personalities as well. A lot of clashes while they're trying to get these cattle to market. But this is a pretty good script. All the characters are likable in a certain way. And as you try to get to understand and know the characters. They slowly develop the characters throughout the film. And then by the time this film gets to its climax, you understand what really needs to happen. And that needs to be one person making that decision. And now they've got to decide who that's going to be. And it is a love-hate relationship between Montgomery Clift and John Wayne. But it seems to make the movie, quote unquote, flow. We're going to put that flow back in there. And so as we move down this river, which is a real river, the Red River, as they get to and go through Missouri. So this is a must-see movie. I think this is one of the better John Wayne movies. And John Wayne's not the primary star in this one. In this movie, Montgomery Clift is the primary star, and John Wayne takes a back seat, not far back, but a back seat in this one as being the dominant character in the film. And Montgomery Clift shows you not just good acting, but he's a very smooth, very calculated, very calm individual in this film, and that's what keeps the cattle drive going in our reality. So yeah, if you get an opportunity to see Red River, that's a must see. If you get an opportunity to see Wind River, that is a good movie to see, and especially if you like thrillers and whodunits. So those are my films, you guys. What do you guys have to offer? Karen, Steve, whoever wants to go next.
Ladies first.
Oh, all right.
What are you saying, Steve? I went first. Thanks, man. Thanks a lot.
Statement stands
Whatever.
for itself.
Whatever.
Wow.
Whatever.
Oh,
Is it this button? Is it this button?
Yeah, no. Don't press the button, whatever you do. So
Do it, I dare you.
My Two Rivers is the movie with the word movie in the title. I mean, my two movies with the word river in the title are The Bridge on the River Kwai and River Guard. So let me talk about Bridge on the River Kwai first. This movie is one of the most highly regarded movies about war, and this movie focused on World War II in American cinema, and it's one of the most highly regarded movies, period. You will often find Bridge on the River Kwai on best movie lists from many, institutions that look at those sorts of things. So the movie came out in 1957, and it stars William Holden, Alec Guinness, Jack Hawkins, Setsu Hayakawa, James Donald, and Jeffrey Horn, among others. And it's basically about this group of British and American soldiers who are taken prisoner. They're prisoners of war, and they are told, voluntold, that they need to build this bridge that the Japanese need to ferry supplies. So, of course, the rank and file soldiers sort of feel like, well, if they want us to build this bridge, we'll build them a bridge, all right. We'll build them a bridge they will never forget. It'll be such a bad bridge. It'll be a horrible bridge. It'll be so freaking sabotage. They will be sorry. They will rue the day that they asked us to build a bridge. So, of course, that's what you do. But the commanding officer of these men, and the Colonel Nicholson was the commanding officer, played by Alec Guinness, said, no, that's not how we're going to play this. We're going to build the best damn bridge that could ever be built, because they're trying to make us like them. They're trying to make us corrupt and weak and without honor. But we're British, and with a couple of Americans thrown in for good measure, and we have honor, and we are going to show them how good we can be in these most horrific of circumstances. So that was how he wanted to play it, and the rest of the soldiers are like, what the hell is going on here? That is not how you play this. Who cares who's honorable? We've got to beat these people. But Colonel Nicholson held sway on that point. So they set about to building the bridge, and that's what this movie's about. It's 2 hours and 41 minutes long, and it's a long movie, I gotta say. But it's so well done that you feel like you're slogging through the movie along with the soldiers. David Lean is the director of this movie, and he just does a masterful job. Now he's the kind of director he's kind of a take no prisoners director. So he's the kind of director who doesn't like Hollywood sound stages very much. So he wants to direct, in the environment. And in this case, the environment was Ceylon, the jungle of Ceylon, not exactly hospitable territory. And, many of his crew dealt with sickness, and there were accidents. In fact, one of the crew members was killed in a car accident on the way to the shoot, because that's how David Lean rolls. And there were incredible transportation problems. They would have to fly the film from Ceylon to London to get it processed for dailies, and then fly the film back to review the dailies. So that's just what was going on there. The interesting thing about the movie was that, for one, it was very difficult to get Alec Guinness to sign on to this. He said yes, then he was like no. And a number of other people were asked, like Laurence Olivier, who said no. Number of other major stars were asked, and they kind of said no. Then we kind of worked it back to Alec Guinness, and a friend who was attached to the film kind of intervened and talked with him and kind of talked him into doing it. And Alec Guinness was like, well, okay. But Alec Guinness had misgivings. For one, he didn't think that he could really portray this character. He didn't feel like he really understood the Colonel Nicholson. And his reason was the reason a number of the other men who were asked to play that role said, no thanks. Because they're like, like Cary Grant was asked. He's like, no, I don't think so. Because he was just a hard guy to wrap your head around. And Alec Guinness famously said, I don't think anyone's going to watch me stomp around for over 2 hours in a movie. I mean, that's not must-see movie. That's not the kind of movie that's a must-see movie. And Laurence Olivier turned down the movie because he decided to direct The Prince and the Pauper with Marilyn Monroe. And he famously said, well, when I thought about it, I decided I'd much rather be in a movie where I'm trying to make love to Marilyn Monroe than in a movie with Alec Guinness when I'm, or not with Alec Guinness, but rather than be in a movie where I'm basically in the jungle for 2.5 hours. So that was what happened there. But this movie, in spite of all the production problems, and like I said, there were many, just ended up being a really, really well done movie. You have it's really a character study. And the character study is famously between Alec Guinness's character, Colonel Nicholson, and Colonel Sato, who is played by Sessue Hayakawa. And if you've ever seen the movie or any trailers from the movie, there's always like this one scene where Sessue Hayakawa slaps Alec Guinness, and he, stoically takes it. It doesn't crumble, doesn't fall back. He just takes it. And in the actual filming, Sasuha Aikawa slapped Alec Guinness really hard accidentally, and Alec Guinness took it like a man, or took it like a colonel. But this movie won 7 Academy Awards. Best Director for David Lean, Best Actor for Alec Guinness, Best Cinematography, Best Screenplay, Best Supporting Actor. Another issue with the movie was whether another issue with the movie was whether it would make sense to have this movie about the war without any love interest at all. David Lean did not want a love interest. The man who was the producer of the movie, who was Sam Spiegel, definitely wanted a love interest in there. And Sam Spiegel and David Lean butted heads quite a bit on production of this movie, even though they kind of got along. They did not see eye to eye on this movie. So David Lean really was like, hell no, there's not going to be a love interest. It's not a love story. This is war. And Sam Spiegel's like, we got to give them something. We got to have a little eye candy. So there was a sort of like a little backstory dropped in during the filming between one of the co-stars and a nurse. But
was that William Holden?
It wasn't William Holden. It was, I want to say it was Jack Hawkins, I believe. Mm-hmm. It had a love story with one of the nurses, but it was really piffle at the end of the day. I mean, who cares? The question is, are they going to build a bridge or not? Which I won't tell you because that would be revealing too much. This movie is also based on a true story about events in World War II that happened between, because there is an actual bridge that spanned the river in Burma, and it was actually used during World War II. The Japanese used it during World War II, and there was a person like Colonel Nicholson. Colonel Nicholson is based on a real colonel, but some of the events that happened in the movie did not actually happen during this part of the war. Anyway, it's like I said, it's long. It's just 20 minutes short of 3 hours, but it's really riveting. It's really interesting. It's very interesting to see these men in this situation, because you not only have World War II, you have the war between the men themselves, the Brits and the Americans, and the war between the Brits and the Americans and the Japanese. Very interesting characters, and people have the opportunities to be heroic and weak, and sometimes they can be both at the same time. So I could recommend it, but I would only be saying what, God knows how many people have said in the over 60 years or over 50 years since this movie's been out. It is like one of the seminal World War II movies. If you care at all about World War II cinema, then you've already seen this movie, or you're going to put this movie on your list of movies to see.
I completely agree. That it is a very encapturing movie, that even though it is just short of 3 hours, you're going to get through it and not realize how much time you spent watching this movie.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I believe the same thing.
I think a really good word, just very quickly, was riveting. It definitely is.
Mm-hmm. It is very riveting.
So my second movie is River Guard. This movie came out in 2016, and I was desperately looking for a movie with river in the title that wasn't the usual suspects, like The River Wild or The River with Mel Gibson and Sissy Spacek, and and then there were a couple of other movies that I thought would be interesting, but I couldn't get enough information about them. this movie is sort of like an indie movie. It stars Brett Cullen, who's pretty well-known character actor, but I would not call him an A-list star at all. He's the kind of guy who works a lot in the movies, but he can go to the grocery store and get groceries without being mobbed. Eric Layden. Eric Layden is in this movie again, someone I've never heard of before this movie, and the movie was directed by Jem Clark, somebody else I've never heard of. Probably one of the more well-known people in this movie is Peter Jason, who plays a judge, because another very well-known character actor. This movie is about a crime writer. Eric Layden plays a crime writer, and he goes to some town, I think in the South, and I want to say North Carolina because there were signs for Charlotte in the movie. But anyway, he goes back to his hometown. He's a relatively successful crime writer, but he's kind of a little bit on the outs at this point. So he goes back home because he's trying to put together another book. And his father is a well-known criminal defense lawyer. His father has a big case. So the movie is about their kind of sort of reunion because they're not all that close. But he comes back and people are like, well, why are you back here? And he's like, well, because I need the money and I need to write a book. His father's in the middle of a big criminal case, and so Sean Flynn, who was played by Eric Layden, is going to write a book about this case. Unfortunately, the case starts to uncover some skeletons in his family closet, more particularly his father's closet, and the movie's about sort of like the head-on collision between Eric Layden's character, Sean Flynn, and Brett Cullen's character, which is Chuck Flynn, sort of like their headlong collision into finding out what's really going on in their family, and there's a terrible secret that's revealed. So the movie, I don't know what I think about this movie. I wouldn't call it a great movie. It's kind of interesting. There's a lot of smoking for a movie that was made in 2016. I mean, oh my goodness. It's like I felt like I'd been kicked back to 1935 or something. Everyone was smoking. So that was weird. And the cinematography was, here's my thing. I said after watching this movie, this is like a film noir movie without the noir. Wow. And that kind of bothers me because to me, if it's film noir, it needs to be noir-y, I guess. And it's like the cinematography didn't just quite get it for me. And also the script just sort of, to me, just veered too much into we're gonna be in subtext land. We're not going to say what we really mean. We're just gonna do these looks and kind of saunter around, and we'll smoke and we'll drink and we won't ever eat a nutritious meal, but we'll still look good. So it was a weird movie, very kind of a weird movie. So I would give this like maybe a 5.5.
Hey Karen, and the operative question here is: was there a river?
At the end of the movie, there was a river.
Thank God the movie was saved by something.
And those are my movies.
Take it.
Oh look, there's a river.
Take it with.
It was at the end of the movie. Maybe at the beginning too.
I don't know if I could do it. I
know at the very beginning, at the very end, there were movies. There were rivers. That was it.
All righty.
At the very beginning and at the very end, this was a movie. Other than that, complete crap fest.
Right.
I enjoyed the beginning and the end.
It was like the first 15 minutes, gold. Last 15 minutes, amazing. Yeah, the rest of it, pure garbage.
Anyway, those are my two offerings. Take it away, Steve.
Oh, me? Yay. Awesome. Thank you very much for that introduction, Karen. It was brief, like always.
But oh, boom.
Thank you. I've got two movies that are pretty far apart when you think about what's going on between them. One of them include a river for 90% of the movie, but does
baby.
the context. And then the other one contains a river for almost 80% of the movie because they're floating down it the whole time.
Alrighty.
The first movie that I'm going to talk about is River of No Return.
All right.
Starring Robert Meacham, Tommy Rettig, who was Jeff Miller on The Lassie Show, Marilyn Monroe, and Roy Calhoun. Calhoun was, of course, in a bunch of westerns in the 50s and 60s.
Rawhide.
He was the western guy.
Yeah, he's good actor.
But the movie's based on a French film called The Bicycle Thief. The Bicycle Thief was a movie in which a man comes home from World War II, and the job that he had and the job that he has to go back to, he needs to be able to ride a bike to do his deliveries and everything like that. And it's stolen. His bike is gone. How can he provide for his family? How can he, make money and live? So he ends up going through the entire movie searching for the bike. Entire movie of searching for something, but it's got that kind of premise at the beginning of it. We join Robert Meacham's character at the very beginning, Matt, as he's just getting out of prison. The reason he went to prison is he was arrested for killing a man while trying to defend somebody else. And they ended up throwing him in jail, even though it was a defense. And he goes to this small town, kind of a spot in the road when it comes to Western towns. Nothing really big or grown up or a lot of people are moving into yet, to find his son. And who ended up had coaxed another guy into taking his son and where he'll be safe because he doesn't have a father. His mother, you find out, ended up dying in part of the movie ever even started. And so the boy ends up getting left in the care of Marilyn Monroe, who works at a local saloon. He's got a boyfriend that's a big he ends up winning a deed for a gold mine. So Marilyn coaxes the gambler's played by Roy Calhoun. He ends up coaxing into going down and making sure this deed gets transferred so they can have, so they can own a gold mine. They can be rich. They can move up in the world. And ends up they get on a boat and they're riding down the river. Well, to head toward this main town where they can get the deed transferred over. They end up wrecking, and they're found by Meacham or Matt Calder and his son, and with his rifle, and Calhoun ends up stealing the horse and the rifle, and accidentally Roy and injuring him while stealing it, so he can get down the river, and he leaves the boy, he leaves Matt literally shot on the side of the bank, and because he's got to get down, he's got to get this deed done. So, real greedy. And then the movie goes through a period of Meacham and Marilyn and the boy really coming together and, having a true family moment. He really gets to spend a lot of time with his son, and he's trying to make up for lost time, and he's doing it, but he really doesn't know what he's doing, and he's really making it up as he's going along. And it's a really good Western. They're attacked by Indians at one point, and then they get away, and then they fix the raft, and then they head down the river. And it's got a bunch of that Western feel to it, that old style. It's kind of gritty. Marilyn Monroe does her singing thing, that she does in a bunch of her different movies. We'll call it a singing thing.
That's
and
right.
and yeah,
So she
it's
sings a lot of
just kind of
Mr.
a coming
President.
together.
What you say?
Yeah, I don't think she sang that in it.
Oh,
But they do a real good job of aspect of a man who just wants to be able to help a son to be looked up to and to really spend that time and come together. And then Marilyn's character ends up falling for him, progressing because she sees how caring he is and how good he is to his son. So I'm not going to kind of go through the end of it because it's really an interesting movie. I hadn't seen it for a long time, but I do remember like a lot about it, and it's well worth a watch. Everybody really rates it, a 6 out of 10 or a 7 out of 10. I just feel like it does a pretty good job for what it's trying to accomplish.
cool. So what's your other film, Steve?
So the next one has one of my favorite actors in it, which is Jean Reno, and it's called Crimson River. It's a completely different spectrum of that Western gritty style. This is more of a psychological thriller. Jean Reno is he's a high ranking police officer / detective in France, in Paris. Well, he ends up getting sent to this small town to invest. This small rural, it's a university town, and it's a bunch of professors, and it's a very secluded, way off the path kind of town that's mostly just dedicated to there's and the university, and that's pretty much it. And it's actually it's so far off that they really don't get out much, so it's actually become coupling. So with kind of an elitist keeping everything in the bloodline.
Oh, wow.
And you really see the effects of it as the movie's going. But Jean Reno's sent to investigate this, while another actor who's been in a handful of movies, another French actor, his name is Vincent Cassel. He was in Elizabeth and Eastern Promises with Viggo Mortensen, and was one of the minus the top two main characters in Black Swan. And he's investigating a murder, or no, he's investigating a grave robbery at a graveyard in which a bunch of photos have been stolen, and a grave has been emptied, at this gravesite. And they end up meeting while investigating what's going on with the first murder. Is traced back to a nun who ends up the person who was murdered, and is the mother of the person who was in the grave. And this is where it kind of gets a little mysticism in the movie, because the mother believes that her child had been haunted by demons up to the point where she died. And she had actually secluded herself into a darkness where she actually locked herself in a cell and prayed every day to give her daughter some peace of mind in the afterlife and all this stuff. And it then turns into a game of cat and mouse between the killer and the detectives, and them deciphering the clues that are left for them to follow to possibly try to catch the killer. That kind of the egotistical style of certain crime dramas. Villain. And it's very, very well paced. There's a lot of stuff that was cut out of the movie, so the only thing I would really about it is there's a lot of context issues. There, as a whole, if you watch the movie, it makes it is missing some pieces to help you put everything together. But sacrifice those things to get a little bit more action, to get a little bit more heightened drama, to get a little bit more of that mysticism where characters are popping in and out of nowhere, and you know, the villain is really entering the scene and exiting the scene, and you're not seeing like certain interactions that needed to happen as it's going. But overall, the film does a good job really keeping pace with itself, too far out to where you have no idea what's going on. And
So,
I feel like it does a real good.
I'm sorry.
Say again. No,
Were
I was
these
just gonna say I feel like it. Greg, go. Oh wow, he turned his camera off and everything. Holy crap.
Oh.
Okay. I'm gonna say the movie does a real good job of getting the point across that it's trying to get across. It tells a complete story, even though you may be missing certain pieces that may make it feel a bit more interactive. Everything that it's trying to do, the acting's pretty on point. Even it was originally a French film, and then it was released by TriStar Pictures over here, and they do a great job of being French to English and all of that. So you don't really miss a step in there where certain times when they cross movies over that it just doesn't line up right or sound right, especially like Japanese films coming to America or certain Chinese ones and stuff like that.
What year did it come out, Steve?
2000. 2000.
So I'm just trying to make sure I understand. So there was this a movie that was cut because of censorship or cut because of
it was
trying to be aligned on a TV?
Nope, it was an actual movie. It was the director, basically in certain directions that he wanted to go. Like the movie's 106 minutes on the runtime. Originally, like before it was cut, it was like in the 125-minute range.
Okay, so not very long at all anyway.
So it wasn't a very long movie, but you could tell where there's 20 minutes or 15 to 20 minutes that was exposition that should be there, shouldn't be there. Actually, Vincent Cassel had come out and said that it's not the movie that they shot. It did very well. The budget was $14 million on the movie. The box office was $60 million worldwide.
Wow.
There was nothing wrong with really what they presented, and it's 106 minutes, so it's an easy movie to sit through and not really get bored with.
Yeah, that's not very long at all.
So I'd probably give it a 7.
Okay.
I'd probably give it a 7 out of 10. A respectable movie, one that you could watch and you could go, oh, I enjoyed that.
Okay.
So, yay.
So any movies out there that are other river movies that are your special mentions before we get out of here? Like A River Runs Through It?
That wouldn't be I wouldn't necessarily mention that one. There's a movie I came across that I just wasn't able to find a way to watch the movie, but it's called The River. And it's actually a coming of age story that's set in India about these two young girls who sort of fall for the same guy. And that was actually my first choice because that just was like one of those, it's a foreign film and, not one I heard, but it sounded really interesting. But I couldn't find a way to watch it because it just wasn't available through Amazon you couldn't rent it or anything. It's just not in the marketplace at this time. So, So that's my honorable mention.
Well, a movie that I thought was pretty good was with Sean Penn, The Mystic River.
Oh, Mystic River, right.
I was going to mention that one, so go for it, Greg.
Sean Penn and Tim Robbins. Yeah, it was a really good movie. And this is a very, I think so. And this is a one of those heartbreaking and heartfelt films about a missing person, about murder, about revenge that stems from this film. And then there was another one. What was the Meryl Streep movie? It's
River Wild.
River Wild. I really enjoyed that movie. That's Meryl Streep and Kevin Bacon.
Yep.
And Kevin Bacon's the villain in that film. And I really, really enjoyed that one too. So those would be my two that I would throw out there, would be additional movies that I think you should out there as consumers to watch. And some movies that you can really get into and keep your interest and throughout the whole film. Definitely try to watch some of the films that we mentioned today, ladies and gentlemen. Keep them in mind. And we hope that you're able to watch some of them. Give us a comment on our YouTube channel here at A Real Point of View. Let us know what you think about the films that we suggested if you're able to see them. And even some films that you may know that have river in the title, whether river's in the film or not. So let us know if you have some additional movies that you thought were pretty good that have river in the title. And that way we can mention them on our show, as well as give you our comments about them. So thanks again for watching us here on A Real Point of View. And I'd like to say goodnight for myself here, the Real Movie Guy, and Karen, Steve.
I'd like to say goodnight too, and join us next week when we talk about movies with the word Earth in the title.
No, we're not doing that. I actually have an idea.
Okay.
No Earth in the title.
No wind in the title? No rain?
I don't know. Give me a second,
Air.
maybe.
Join us next week when we talk about movies with air in the title.
Actually, we could do that.
As Diana Ross said, no rain, no rain. Okay, anyway. All right, so much for that. So, well, thanks again, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us here at A Real Point of View on our YouTube channel. We appreciate you. And check us out on our fan page on Facebook. And check us out at Twitter under A Real Movie Guy. And the Movie Maven is Karen D. Also on Twitter. And our secretary here, Steve, as he keeps typing away for next week's theme, we'll be at you again talking about movies. Take care, everybody.
Movies.